So I'd like to thank, first of all, the 4 visible people, Sally, Spencer, Jay, and James. All the rest of you people who are just hiding behind a black picture, come on out. We miss you. There we go. Oh, yeah, Anita, good morning. How are you? She's going to unmute and say something. No, she's not going to unmute and say something.
There we are.
Good morning.
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm just happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, so 5 of us came out of hiding, and I'm really appreciative of that. Hi, Peter. I have no camera. All right, Valerie, good one. Yeah, and plus your picture looks great, so we're all good. All right, you ready to jump in? Morning, Tanya. Oh, she came. She surfaced and disappeared. Tanya came up for air. I'm just kind of enjoying the show here. All right, you ready? Let's blast this thing. I think I've got a great program today. There's 3 segments to what we're going to do today. They're all action items, things that you can do immediately. For those of you who have been on prior calls, there's somewhat of an intersection of information. So if it's repeated, it's probably because you didn't do it last time. So on your mark, get set, let me share. Here we go. It should look something like Ninja Selling, and let me play it from the start. Does that look like, James, does that look something like, says 3 parts today? All right. And Jay, by the way, has volunteered to help me with the role play in a little bit, and I'll let you know, Jay, when it's time. All right, so we're going to follow the Ninja system. We're going to do a mindset piece, then we're going to do an action piece, and then we're going to do a skill set improvement piece. And my assumption for today is, number 1, you guys are crushing it. The market is crazy. Still is everywhere. No inventory. People are coming out of the woodwork with money to buy. But you enjoy getting better. And I'm going to take a page out of our favorite reading, Mastery, from Stuart Emery. And he says, for most of us, it begins with technical excellence in a chosen field. So we're going to do a technique piece today that hopefully is valuable for you. Before we start, we've been talking a lot about marketing, etc. And so I want to share a thought of the day. And I might have shared it before, but not. I think this really bears repeating. And it's a 3-step sequence. The first is that marketing creates awareness, but relationships create business. And then Sally's nodding, but the third piece is connection is what creates relationships. And if you start with this idea that you can send all the marketing pieces in the world out, what you do is you have people aware that you're there, but that in and of itself is not the core business creator. And I'm going to put this into context with something I'm noticing all over the industry. And it starts with a piece of insight that Stephen Covey himself shared. When I was building my company in Albuquerque, and most of you know, I ended up with about a 750 agent company that I ran for 20 years. We were and still are the #1 real estate company in New Mexico. And we did that with obviously organic growth, but with some acquisitions. And in early 2002, I think you know, we were featured on the cover of Realtor magazine as the fastest growing company in the United States. And we went from 150 agents to 500 agents in a 6-month period. And that created a lot of stress in terms of the culture of our company. So we took the entire management team to the Stephen Covey Institute in Sundance, Utah. It was a week long, and it was really a transformative and amazing week. But at the end, Stephen Covey himself came out, and he said something that I will never, ever forget, and I think is really important. He said, you can be efficient with processes and systems, but you cannot be efficient with people. And that I thought was so profound, because right now the industry is doing everything it can to make us efficient with people. And let me kind of give you an example of that. That technology, and I have nothing but a love of technology. I'm sort of a low-level propeller head. But right now, if you look at it, whether it's HomeSnap, whether it's Real Scout, whether it's Zillow, everything is saying use this technology to create relationships, when in fact it is not relationship creating, it's marketing creating, and it's efficient. And the trouble is we're confusing the efficiency of technology with the efficiency of human connection. And so our general assumption is that data is everywhere and everybody can get it. But if we just send them a report, an email report of what's going on in their neighborhood, of what's going on in the marketplace, they'll get the report, they will open it, which problem number one. And more importantly, they'll understand the report. And I want to talk about why that is efficient, but it is not connecting. Our core assumption is that the data is sufficient. And the truth is, data is just data, and it completely goes around the idea of our value as a realtor and our value as a ninja. So just if you're curious about what I'm even talking about, here's an assignment for today for you to walk in the shoes of all the people that you know on your database. Here's the assignment. Without using MLS, that's the number one key. In other words, pretend you're a consumer. Run a report of everything that has gone on in any neighborhood or any specific building in their market. And the key is the report has to include current actives, if there are any, current pendings, expireds, and closed for the last 6 months. And see if you can do this report. The fact is you cannot. And why is this important? Because when you look at this, these are the 4 key elements of a real estate review. And what we keep thinking is we can automate real estate reviews, which are efficient, but they don't create a relationship. And then we think, well, you know, data is everywhere. They don't need us to tell them what's going on in the area. And I would tell you that more than ever, they need that because they can't interpret it themselves. So if you think that data is everywhere, it's how it's presented that is impossible. Can Zillow tell you the current pendings? Can Zillow tell you the expireds? Can Zillow tell you the closed with accuracy? No. So here's what the ninja mindset piece is, that it's not about the report. It's not about the efficiency of what Home Scout or Home Snap or Real Scout or Zillow can give you. It's about the conversation that's created by the report. And if our mindset shift is, it's not about the data, it's not about the information, it's about the conversation that ensues after the report is created and delivered. Because it's 10 minutes into the conversation that somebody goes, well, you know, we were kind of thinking about buying, selling, buying a rental, buying an investment, buying a lot. What do you think? And we think that they're just interested in the data, but the data sparks the interaction, sparks the connection. Before I go on, and I said this before, but it happened to me twice in this last week, and I'm just getting pretty keyed up about this thing. I keep getting emails from agents all over the country, and in the subject line, it says, it's a great time to list. And what comes up for me is, who is that about? Is that the ninja piece of adding value, or is it the ninja piece of, I need a listing? And here's the key. Just because it's a great time to list, you haven't added any value to somebody who knows that the market is hot. What in fact you've done is just basically said, I'm begging for a listing.
You're looking for?
So what I would urge you to consider
I don't
doing,
have your pad.
I'm going to,
I gave it to you for some reason.
Alex, somebody
Can't find it.
go. Hold on. So here's the concept. Does it's a great time to list add value? I don't think it does. It just creates confusion. So what's the confusion? The confusion is, well, if I sell, what do I do? Just because it's a good time to list doesn't mean I'm in a place in my life where I want to sell. If I have to sell and then replace it, what's that going to mean? In other words, it's much bigger than it's a great time to list. They all know that the market is crazy, but it doesn't solve their pain or help their pleasure. So I would urge you to quit sending emails that say it's a great time to list. If you're going to do that, say, you know, are you living in your dream home? That would be a better question. With interest rates as low as they are you living in the place you really want to be? So let's start with the mindset piece that it's not about the data. It's not about the report. It's about the connection and the help creating value and solving pain and pleasure when we talk to people. So what it really is, you're just being efficient by sending emails like that, thinking that you're creating a relationship, but instead you're just creating a marketing piece that, in fact, I think is alienating half the people. So mindset piece number one. Now here's the action segment. It's the lowest inventory ever, and everybody I know all over the United States is going, we need houses to sell. And that, of course, brings them to, I know, I'm going to send an email to everybody saying it's a great time to sell. Bad idea. But let's go through this and say, what's a better thing to do? Do you know what a ghost on your database is? So here's the key. A ghost on your database, and I'm just going to take a cut at this. My belief is that almost everybody who actually has a database, and because you're ninjas, we know you have a database, and you're going, of course, Peter, duh. But let's assume that you have a database of 200 people. Almost all of us have not talked.
Hello, sweetheart.
Hi, sweetheart. Agustina. There you go. I know she was saying that to me, don't you think? A ghost on your database are the people that you haven't talked to in a year. The people that you have never talked to. You may be sending them your just sold postcards, or you may be sending them something, but you haven't picked up the phone and talked to them. So the assignment is, the action is to pick 5 ghosts a day. You haven't talked to them in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and just pick up the phone. And we've gone over this, but I want to go over it again. Right now, people are more wound up than they've ever been. The 2 P's are the politics and the pandemic. And I don't believe I've ever seen a time in my life where people are more emotionally keyed up. So when you pick up the phone, you're going to not say, hey, Jay, how you doing? Anita, how you doing? That's what we used to say. But instead, you're going to say, Anita, this is Peter Parnig. I don't know if you remember, I'm a realtor at John R. Wood, and I sold you your house 3 years ago, and I have not talked to you in 3 years, but you've been crossing my mind. And I said, for the last 6 months, every time I thought about you, I got distracted and I didn't call you. But today I said, I'm going to call you. How are you feeling right now with everything that's going on? And if you'll start your questions, your calls like that, you will have an absolutely wonderful, deep conversation that's meaningful, rather than how you doing. Because if you say how you doing, you know what they're going to say? Oh, pretty good. Oh, not bad. Some lame, not connecting answer. Now, here's why this is different. As I said before, the social contract is amended. What does that mean? And this is anecdotal data, but I think it's pretty accurate. If you called somebody that you hadn't talked to in a year before the pandemic, all the data that we are hearing from people around, about 20% of the people would pick up and 80% of people would let it go to voicemail. In other words, they were all busy and they were all, whatever. But during the pandemic, the social contract of how people have been behaving has changed dramatically. And everywhere around the country, from New York City to Los Angeles to hopefully Naples, what we're discovering is if you call somebody you haven't talked to in a year or two, 80% of people are picking up. Why? Because they're yearning for connection. And here's what we know. Listings, inventory, comes from connection, the conversation, and you solving pain or pleasure. So your action item for this week, for the next month, is every day, see if you can talk to the ghosts on your database. In other words, let's go ghost hunting. And so far, we've been doing this for about a month. Not one person has said, oh my gosh, the person picked up the phone and went, Jay, I didn't like you when you sold me my house 5 years. I still don't like you. I haven't called you to take me off your database, but don't ever call me again. Not one person has reported that answer. You know what they all report? People go, oh my gosh, Jay, it's great to hear from you. And then you know what they say? This is so weird. I was just thinking about you. So what I'm going to suggest is let's go ghost hunting and make it a priority to talk to the people that you normally don't talk to on your database. So that's the skill set. The action segment. Now, what I want to do is introduce a whole idea around skill set. And this is making a couple of core assumptions that a study in NAR, gosh, I want to say about 3 years ago that I read, said that 80% of customers reported that one of the things they want most help with is the money, especially if they're getting financing. Now, I know in Naples especially, you have a lot of cash transactions, but people who are getting mortgages seem to want to have a conversation about, well, what would happen if I put another $50,000 down or $10,000 down? And what we did somewhere in the early 2000s is we abdicated our expertise, our excellence, to the mortgage industry. And very, very few agents right now can actually do mortgage calculations on the phone, on their phone with a customer. In other words, if they said, what will my payment do if instead of a 30-year mortgage, I do 15? And most of us go, well, it'll go up a lot. And we pull numbers out of our briefcase. To me, that's not excellence in a chosen field. Somewhere along the line, we got really lazy, and the mortgage industry convinced us that we were not capable of talking about money. Well, I'm not here to tell you to talk about mortgage programs, but if somebody says, what's the P&I on a $500,000 mortgage at 2.75% interest, I think it is a basic skill of a realtor to be able to say, hold on, let me tell you. And then if they say, well, if I put down 50 more thousand, what's the P&I on 450,000? You have to be able to tell them to do that. Now I'm going to tell you why based on what we're going to do here. One of the things that we need to do is help your buyers quantify their tolerance for risk. And I'm going to show you a technique. Jay and I are going to do a little role play, because I think if you're working with buyers who are nervous right now that they might be paying top of the market, and I guess I only can see 5 of you, but would you say that a lot of buyers are going, holy moly, with multiple offers on everything, am I being stupid right now? Am I just going to get creamed? So we need to help them with that. And I want to show you a way to do it. The way we're going to do this is with a series of questions, and then we're going to clarify their numbers. And so here's how to quantify risk. We want to find what we call their threshold number. In other words, where is it that they feel really a level of discomfort? But what's most important is you don't do this when they're trying to figure out how much to pay for a house. You do it in the buyer interview before you're in front of a house. And then I'm going to show you how to put it into perspective, and then we're going to share some exact mortgage info. So if you don't have a mortgage calculator for your iPhone, I did some research. This is the very best one I found, because the most important thing is it has to be able to do an amortization schedule. I looked, this one I believe is free, but if you'll notice on the third screen down here, it shows amortization schedules, and that I'm going to show you is super important. But I think this is a really good app if you don't have one. Now, I'm a CCIM, so I've lived my life in the HP world, but I think there's some really easy to use apps, and I'm going to show you why this is important. All right. So Jay, unmute my friend, and we're going to do a little role play. Here's the setup. Jay is buying a house. We've done our funnel process. We've done the buyer process. And before we get in the car to go out, I'm going to set a what if scenario that goes like this. And I'm going to say, Jay, when we go out into the marketplace in the price range you're looking, it's very competitive right now. There are multiple buyers looking at almost every house that, from what I can tell, you would consider. And it's pretty likely you're going to get into a multiple offer situation. And I want to prepare for that scenario so that we can take some of the fear and anxiety out of it. So I'm going to set a scenario up like this. Let's assume that the day you buy your house, the market stops appreciating. In other words, you buy truly at the top of the market, okay? And all of a sudden you close, and now you go, what happened to the market? And 5 years from now, you call me and you say, Peter, I want to sell my home. And I go, great. I come out and the house that you look at, that you bought, I say, well, Jay, it hasn't appreciated at all. You bought at the top of the market. Good news, it hasn't depreciated, but it's flat. And I do a net out for you. And it turns out that you are going to walk away with less money than you put for a down payment. So my question is, if you walked away with $5,000 less than you put in, how would you feel about that?
Well, I wouldn't be jumping for joy, but $5,000 depends on what kind of joy I got out of that house. If I like living there, I mean, I'm okay with that. I'd lose more on my truck when I sell it.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. What if you lose $10,000? How would you feel about that? Does the pain get more, or is it still like, meh?
The pain gets a little more. I mean,
How
I
about-
still
How about
15.
15 gets, how's the pain at 15?
You're pushing it up on me now. You're
Okay.
pushing it up on me
Here's
now.
here's why I
yeah.
said that. When we get to the house that you like, you probably will need to pay $5,000 to $10,000 more than you would like. And I don't want you to lose the house that you love for $5,000 or $10,000. And the reason I went through this is it would be uncomfortable, but it wouldn't massacre you emotionally to lose $5,000 or $10,000, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't. No.
So when we look at the house you're thinking of, keep this $5,000 or $10,000 in mind, because all of a sudden it'll be like, is this that moment, Peter? And I'm going to go, yeah. To get this house, you really need to add 5 or 10. And so I just want to put that in perspective. Okay.
Great.
Now I want to show you something else here. Now that we have helped them, oops, typo, find their number, 5 to 10,000, 15. And if you'll notice, 15 is where he got kind of antsy, but probably for the perfect house, he might even consider going 12 or 13. But what we've done in the laboratory before we're even in the car, before we're looking at houses, is we've helped him identify his pain point so that when he's there, he's already processed it. And this it's really helpful, but now I'm going to give you the magic tool. Show them the amount of principal reduction in the first 5 years. And you have to show them rather than talk about it. And this is where you have to have a calculator, because I'm going to give you a test question right now. First of all, I want to show you what the average appreciation in Marco Island and Naples is. I didn't do it for Fort Myers. But if you look at this, and this comes from Focus First, I don't know how many on the call are actually using Focus First. But if it were me, I would have this graph. I would make 20 copies immediately, and I would keep it in my on my desk so that I could give one to every buyer. Because if you look at this, minus 2005 and 2008, where you had a 39% run up and then a 40% decrease, you have had really stable appreciation over the last 30 years, really. And we know what caused 2005. And so what's really important is to show somebody that on average, you're appreciating 5.3%. Why is that important? Because if I give the scenario where appreciation stops and they feel okay, and then I show people this, it's like, oh, all you're doing is buying about 6 months in advance. And so this is an example of showing is better than telling. I'm going to email this graph to James so everybody will have it. But I would print literally 20 copies and show this to every buyer. I think it's very reassuring. And I'll do one for Fort Myers for you, Jay, okay?
Great.
Okay, now here's where we're going to finish this up. Here's your critical skill. And you have to do it exactly, not a guesstimate. Most of us guess stuff, but that's what amateurs do, not what ninjas do. So let me show you with your mortgage calculator. Here's the example. And for those of you who are on board with this, what I'd love for you to do is to show me if you, in fact, can do this right now while I'm talking. Here's the skill. If I say I'm going to borrow $500,000 at 2.75% interest for 30 years, who can tell me what the P&I is right now? In other words, do you have it on your phone? Okay. The P&I, we know what that is, but what's the outstanding principal at the end of month 60? This is what we want to be able to show them. So who can tell me exactly on this phone call right now what the principal balance will be, or what their principal reduction will be in 5 years to reassure a buyer? Anita looks like she's working on a calculator. I feel like the smoke is coming out of her ears. Here's the key. I'm going to show you what the answer is. And when I do, tell me how many of you would have guessed close to this number. Actually, let's do this. I'm gonna stop share just for a second because I can't stand it. Anybody want to make a guess at what? And I'll open the chat too. I need a class on this. Yes, we all do. Who can tell me what the principal balance at the end of 5 years is on a $500,000 mortgage? Anybody ready to share? All right, I'm going to start sharing again, and I'm going to show you. This, I think, will blow your mind. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Outstanding principal balance is $442,000. What that means, in 5 years, they've paid down almost $57,000 on their mortgage. So if you take that into account, the $10,000 or $15,000 totally goes away. In other words, they're never going to walk away with less money, even with closing costs, because the $57,000 pays all of the closing costs. So why this is important is we throw away principal reduction in the first 5 years mentally because we think, oh, the first 5 years, it's all interest. That's not true. On every mortgage, there's crazy principal reduction, but the key is that you can show it and tell it to your buyer so they go, wow, I didn't know that. So here's your key, is to get the mortgage app, learn to use it, and they're not that complicated, especially the one I showed you. And then every buyer say, hey, I just want to, if you think you're paying high amounts right now, by the way, let's remove the idea of paying too much or overpaying from our vocabulary. Because you know what? The market is what the market is. And people want to buy, and you can get a 2.75% interest rate. Holy moly, don't tell them, oh man, everybody's overpaying. Just say, yeah, we're paying this amount. And I just want you to feel comfortable that you know what your risk is, because that's what most people are worried about. You know, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but there's only 2 times that it matters what you paid for something. What your mortgage payment is if you didn't pay cash, and then when you sell it. You know what your mortgage payment is for the whole time you're earning it, so that's fixed. But the question is, will I lose money when I sell it? And that's what comes into play. So if you can solve these 2 things, you become a technical expert. Here's our phrase at Ninja, you've heard it. Be the source of information. Instead of when you're talking to the person, say, well, you know, let me check with my mortgage broker on what the principal reduction be. That's lame. They're sitting there in front of the house trying to write the offer, and you shouldn't go, well, let me get the mortgage guy to tell you. You be that guy. You're making about 4 times as much on each deal as the mortgage guy. So I think for, you know, if you do a quick number, if you're making 25 grand on a $500,000 house, I think we can learn how to use a calculator. That's my sort of Peter on a soapbox chat here. So there is almost no risk right now, even for a perfection person, if you will use this technique. So let's remind ourselves, if you use the system will work for you. So I want to stop sharing, and then I want to have a little discussion about anything that we said here, anything I said that you go, so how do you handle this for cash buyers, since over 70% of our buyers are cash? And I think that you do everything the same way by showing the graph, Suzanne, and you show the graph that on average we have 5% appreciation per year. And then if you walk through that with them, they'll go, oh, so you're really telling me that if I just average, including what happened in 2007 and 9, 5% per year for 5 years is 25%. That feels pretty good to me. But the key is to have the graph there to show that to them. Any other questions? Any other comments? Things you did like, things you didn't like. This one was short and sweet today because I want to not have anybody duck behind calling ghosts.
Hey, Peter, someone asked in the chat, what mortgage app do you use if you have one?
Yeah, it was in the, let me go back. Hang on a second here. Let me see if I can go back to here. Let me go find it. It's about, hold on. This is I use the HP 10B2, but that's a CCIM deal. It's this one right here. And if you, and I don't know whether they have the same one for Android. I'm an iPhone guy, so I was only able to, but it looks, the key is this is what it looks like. Most importantly, it has to have the amortization schedule. And you know, interestingly, if people are paying cash, I think that it's an appropriate conversation right now to say, I know you want to pay cash, but let me ask you a question. Can you get a better than a 2.75% return on cash right now? And the answer is, if you just buy any index in the stock market, you're getting 10%. I would have a conversation with a cash buyer, say, you know, you can borrow at 2.75%. It's the cheapest it's ever been. Do consider that, because I think it's a unique opportunity. So just because somebody says they're saying cash, I think part of being the source is to say, wait a second, you know, that's pretty powerful. Any thoughts on having that conversation? I guess we're going to call that a big fat no.
Peter, this is Suzanne.
Hi.
I've had that conversation with multiple buyers, and there's just certain people that just, they want what they want and they pay cash, and that's the way they do it.
Yep.
But I try to have that conversation with the rates ridiculously low now. It's stupid not to, but.
Well, I think what you said is most importantly. Remember, Ninja, we are in charge of the process and they're in charge of the decisions. If your process is just to bring that up to them and they go, no, thanks, I appreciate that. You know, we got $5 million in the stock market and we don't need another $700,000 there. I think that's great. So yeah, Rock is saying Carl's mortgage calculator for Android. Thank you. And let's see what Mary Beth is saying. I've had a few people wanting to finance for the reasons you mentioned and losing deals to cash buyers. You know, that's an interesting conversation too. What I think is coming up here for me over and over again, this idea about technology kind of ruling the world, they need our counsel here more than ever, because you have to explain, yeah, you may want to get a mortgage deal. Why don't you close for cash and then refinance after? That's another option, that you can get a 50% refinance after you close, do your cash deal, and then you've solved the problem both ways. And I think that's another way I might go about it if you're losing deals to cash. What do you think about that as an option? Sally, go.
I have folks that come in, they're all bailing out of the Northeast.
Yep.
And they're learning that their money is not really going to buy what they want and what they came down here with the mindset. I think this could, being able to fine tune this and be comfortable with it would be helpful. That's number one. Number two, I had folks who just didn't want to get in the car with me because of the virus.
Yeah.
The car is where you create your relationship. The car is when you can really, really listen and get information. And it's just debilitating, even though I basically said, it's less than ideal. I understand where you're coming from. Of course you can we can caravan. However, I said, my protocol has been that a couple sits in the back seat. We all wear masks. We've got hand sanitizers in every door pocket. But this is where their comfort zone was. And went along with it, but I walked away with just feeling like I didn't have any connection. I found it very hard.
So let me ask you a question. Now more than ever, are you doing the buyer's process by Zoom before they get there?
No, because until they get here, they don't know what is going to work with their money.
Remember, the buyer's process really has nothing to do with finding the house. The buyer's process is really about it's creating the connection by asking the questions. And so one of the things we're discovering is that the people who are, especially in a resort or a second home or a move to market like yours, we do a lot of that here in Colorado because people are coming to Vail, to the ski resorts, from Mexico, from Abu Dhabi, literally. We have, you know, a world market here that if you get really good at doing the buyer's process by Zoom, you get all kinds of that stuff out. And I would urge you, if you haven't been, to force the issue on that, because we're having great success by doing that, including drawing the funnel. And, you know, I think maybe our next call will say, why would you do a funnel process when there's nothing to look at? And I think that's a really important thing. And the rhetorical question is, why would you? And the answer is to show them that they're not missing anything, show them that that you have a process. Because I do believe that right now, Sally, you're totally right. Everybody's saying, gosh, I used to make my connection in the car. And even worse, then I used to make my connection showing houses. But now with cameras everywhere, you can't even talk in the house about the house. It's just different than it's ever been. So I would certainly recommend going back and going through that 10-step buyer process and saying, hey, I got a process and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and it'll help us get clear. And then you start to, you know, you create the relationship there. Plus you demonstrate you have a process. Any other questions? All right, I need a pinky swear pledge. Who on the call is willing to go ghost busting today and call 5 ghosts? This is when you unmute, show me your picture, raise your hand, take your little reaction thing. I do, I have my list, go Doreen. Yeah, Tanya's in, Anita's in. Yes, I'm gonna do a thumbs up, whee! Everybody give me a thumbs up that you're willing to. Okay, Annette, outstanding. Here's what will happen when you do this. It will be crazy. I believe that if you make 5 ghost calls, you'll probably get a listing because somebody will go, this is so weird you called. And all of a sudden you'll have, first of all, you'll feel great because you're having connecting conversations. B, it'll be fun to hear the stories. And then the last thing I want to tell you is, if you want some inspiration around this, go to Ninja U. M gives me a heart. Go to Ninja U and listen to the interview that we released on Friday with Chris Doyle. And Chris got massacred in the pandemic because everything he did to create connection, he couldn't do anymore. And he tells the story. He ended up, he does about 65 transactions a year, normally makes about 680, 650, and been in the business 19 years. If you saw his first interview, it's mind-blowing great. But in May, he had nothing under contract. He said it was the first time in 19 years he hadn't had 3 or 4 things. And then he talks about what he did to rehabilitate himself. And a lot of it is around this, but if you want some inspiration, it's just a fantastic interview from somebody who got massacred. So I just wanted to share that with you because it's pretty great interview, and I think it's on the unpaid side as well. All right, last questions, and then you get 15. Me too. I have my list. Yes, I do. Awesome. All right, mindset. It's not about the data. It's about the what? It's about the conversation. Don't send them reports. Don't say it's a good time to list. Pick up the phone. Oh, thank you, Tanya. It's about connection. Whoop. Call some ghosts and then get your mortgage app. I think we got 3 things to do, and be the source of information. Any last questions or anything that you disagree with? If not, we are good to go. Go have an amazing day. Let's send Corey some love. She's not feeling great. And Jay, thank you for being a really terrific role play partner. Just raise your offer by $15,000 and shush, all right? That was a joke. Okay, everybody. Yeah, Spencer, thanks for laughing. I appreciate you. All right, everybody unmute and let's clap and close this meeting. No, remember? We're doing it. We're doing the ninja clap on the count of 3. Are we ready? 1, 2, ha! All right. See you in June. Love you like brothers and sisters. Bye-bye.
Bye.